Hey friends, Dean Bokhari here, and welcome to day number 5 of the Habit Building Challenge right here inside of Club 12. We are now on our final day of the challenge, and I want to share a few ideas with you for making sure that you stick with your habit. Because look, when we set out to make significant changes of any kind in our lives, the one thing that we can always be sure of is that we're going to run into obstacles along the way. We're going to hit problems and challenges and things are going to prevent us and try to derail us from doing the things that we know we got to do. Right? You're going to get sick. You're going to have to travel. You're going to have a terrible day at work, and you're going to mess up and miss taking action on the habit that you want to build. And you know what? That is completely fine because you're a human being just like everybody else. Now, if you screw up, or if you miss a day, or if you mess up your habit, it's okay, as long as you handle it properly. Right? Most people don't have a plan for what to do when they screw it up. And so that's why they end up not being able to stick with the habits they want to build. Right? Most folks get thrown off when they mess up. They miss one day, which often turns into 2 days, which often spirals into an entire week. And before they know it, they've given up on their habit altogether. But people who approach habit building strategically, right? They anticipate potential challenges and they prepare themselves in advance by putting a safety net in place, or a contingency plan, as I like to call it. Right? There's this famous study out of the European Journal of Social Psychology where researchers discovered that when participants were working on developing habits, missing a day of doing their desired behavior did not materially affect the habit formation process for them. And that's a good thing, right? Because it tells us that the occasional slip up every now and then is part of the process. But that's sort of the obvious part of the study, isn't it? Right? The not so obvious part is that while the study proved that missing one day is statistically insignificant, the experts also noted that it's the psychological fallout of missing a day that can kill the habit. In other words, if you're a perfectionist, right, and you end up missing a day of a habit that you want to build, it can make you feel like you failed at building habits altogether. And that feeling of failure often leads to missing more days and eventually quitting altogether. Right? So putting that caveat aside, for most of us though, missing a day is a statistical blip. It's no big deal. But missing 2 days, if you miss 2 days in a row in the beginning of a brand new neural pathway that you're forming, which is trying to build a habit, right? A different pathway forms, and that is the habit of not doing the thing that you set out to do. So the bottom line is that perfection is not required to build a habit. Consistency is, right? Consistency over the long term. Right? The danger, in other words, is not the first mistake you make, it's the downward spiral that can follow it. So the question is, how do you keep yourself from missing more than a day of taking action on the habit that you want to build? How do you stop yourself from spiraling and giving up on your habit completely? Again, you anticipate and you mitigate against potential obstacles that might get in your way as you work on building your new habit. All right, one of the most powerful ways to do that is, again, to put contingency plans in place so you can stay as consistent as possible. Right? If you miss one day, forgive yourself, okay? But be sure to have a backup plan so you never miss twice. For example, I'm big on working out. I'm big on exercise. I do something active every day, right? And I don't like to miss even one day if I can help it. So like last year, out of the 365 days we had in 2025, I worked out for 360 of them, right? So I missed 5 days of training in 2025, each on separate isolated days, but never back to back. And my contingency plan for consistently keeping up with my workout habit is pretty straightforward and simple, right? If something happens that keeps me from doing a full workout, I do a partial workout. If I'm crunched for time one morning and I'm unable to do a full 60 or 90-minute workout as usual, I cut my training session in half. If I can't do 5 sets of deadlifts, I do 3. If I'm unable to do 3, I do 2. Right? Instead of running 5 miles, I'll run 3. The key is to stay consistent as much as humanly possible, right? Even if that means that you got to half-ass it sometimes. Right? Consistency is key. Even if you don't feel like it, even if you don't have the time, doing something is always better than doing nothing at all. So give yourself permission to be imperfect, right? You're doing something new, you're building a new habit, you're installing a major change into your life. So give yourself permission to be imperfect about it. You're a human being, but also have a backup plan in place so that you never miss twice. Right, here are a few more examples of using contingency plans to make sure that you keep up with your habit and don't miss a day or just skip it for whatever reason. Right, some contingency plans to put into place for working out might be, if I miss my morning workout, then I'll do 20 push-ups before bed. If I miss my reading habit, then I'll read 1 page during my lunch break. If I'm unable to journal 3 pages, then I'll journal 1 sentence about one thing that I'm grateful for. If I can't cook a healthy meal from scratch because I want to build healthy eating habits, well, if I'm on the go, I'll pick up a grilled chicken sandwich and a salad from Chick-fil-A. Right? If I'm unable to meditate for 20 minutes today, I'll take 3 slow breaths during my lunch break. Again, you will dramatically increase your ability to make a habit take hold if you've got a contingency plan in place or a plan B in place, a backup in place for whenever things go wrong. So your final challenge today is to create your own contingency plan to keep yourself consistent with your own habit. And to do that, you want to use the following formula. If I'm unable to do the habit I want, then I will do this instead. Right? If I'm unable to do the habit I want, then I will do this instead. If I'm unable to meditate for 20 minutes, then I will take 3 slow breaths during my lunch break instead. Right, so go ahead and create your own contingency plan. But before we go, I want to share one more thing with you. Right, over the last 5 days, you've identified the one most important habit that you want to build, and then you turn that habit, that big habit, into a tiny habit to make it manageable. Right, you did that in day 1. Then you created a habit stack in day 2 to help you do your habit, right, to remind you, to trigger you to action. Then you set up a frictionless environment to make execution less effortful for yourself. You did that in day 3. Then you selected an immediate reward to give yourself after doing your habit. You did that in day 4. And then today, you're going to create a contingency plan to keep yourself consistent, even on your worst days. Now, got one final thing to share with you as we wrap up this challenge. On day 1, as I just mentioned, I asked you to select your single most important habit. But then again, I asked you to turn that habit into a tiny habit, to make it smaller, shrink it down, make it easier to do. So if your most important habit is to lift weights for 45 minutes a day, and your tiny habit, right, the shrink down, the smaller version of it, is to train for just 15 minutes a day, how do you scale up? How do you work your way up to your actual desired habit of training for 45 minutes daily? Well, the first thing to know is that you can't do it overnight, right? You can't improve a habit that doesn't exist yet, which is why I asked you on day 1 to start with a tiny version of it, the smaller version of the larger habit you want to build. So what I want you to do is, for the next 14 days, I don't want you to change a thing, right? Just stay focused on your tiny habit. Show up every day, be consistent, master the art of the start, and get comfortable with taking action. Then once your tiny habit feels completely automatic, right? It's a piece of cake, right? Once it feels weird not to do it, once it feels totally natural for you, that is when I want you to scale up and expand towards that larger habit you set on day 1. Right? And you do this using a concept called progressive overload. Right? Just like a weightlifter doesn't jump from a 15-pound dumbbell to a 50-pound dumbbell overnight, you are not going to jump from a tiny 2-minute habit to a 60-minute habit overnight either. Right? You're going to expand your willpower in tiny increments by taking small steps daily. So let's say your most important habit right now is to read for 20 pages read 20 pages of a nonfiction book each day, right? And your tiny habit, the tiny version of it, let's say that is to read just 1 page per day. So for the next 14 days, keep on reading your 1 page a day. Keep on reading your 1 page a day, every day for the next 2 weeks. And then on your 3rd week, bump it up to 3 pages. On week 4, bump it up to 5 pages. Week 5, bump that bad boy up to 10 pages a day. And each time you bump it up, check in with yourself. Hey, am I comfortable? Is this feeling effortless? Is this automatic and natural? Right? When you get to week 6, right, bump it up to 15 pages and then just continue increasing each week in small increments until you're in the habit of crushing 20 pages of a book each day. And you're doing it with little resistance. It feels natural. It feels automatic. Now, if you ever bump up the habit that you want to build and you start missing days, or it feels too effortful, like you're going to be using too much willpower, right? Then it means that your willpower wasn't ready yet. And that's okay. Again, it's totally fine. Just dial it back a little bit, right? Dial it back down to the previous level, lock that in for another week, and then try again, right? When you start new habits, start with focusing on consistency, because consistency is the foundation of any habit. You can build on top of that. The intensity can come later. So start small, keep it tiny until it feels automatic and natural, and then gradually work your way up to the habit that you want to scale. So go ahead, get out there, execute consistently, and the habit is going to take care of itself. Now go crush it.